participants with Megan Brown's bio, and maybe while while I'm speaking, Megan can bring her on board her PowerPoint. Megan Brown has worked at the National Park Service for 16 years, starting as a grants management specialist, and then spending 10 years as the Certified Local Government Coordinator, and now serves as the Chief of the State, Tribal, Local Plans and Grants Division, located within the Cultural Resources Directorate of the National Park Service in Washington, D.C. Before joining NPS, Megan worked at the Southwest Office of the National Trust for Historic Preservation in Fort Worth, Texas, and also the State Historic Preservation Office in South Carolina. Megan, are you ready to take over?
I think so. Can everybody hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. I actually washed my hair and put on makeup for y'all, but you can't see me, but that's the life we live these days, right? Anyway, I want to talk to you today some about what our division does, the State, Tribal, Local Plans and Grants Division. We shorten that up and we call it STLPG, and we strongly embrace the pig parts, as you can see, and try to have a little fun with what is probably the longest name in the Park Service. Clearly, Jim and I have a similar taste, as I have the same slide. And I think this might be a nice moment just to talk about, you know, how did someone like me get to this position? Because I think that kind of helps y'all think about careers and that kind of thing. Is this what I had planned to do or thought I was going to do? Definitely not. I started out as an architecture major at Auburn University. Graduated during one of our many recessions, and then went back to school for historic preservation because I had an interest in history, a minor in history, and somehow it all worked out. I worked for a National Heritage Area for a while, learned probably the most I've ever learned in my life working for the State Historic Preservation Office, so I encourage any of you to do an internship or work with one of them. Worked for the National Trust for Historic Preservation, so got a sense of the nonprofit side of things, and now have been at the Park Service, but have changed jobs, all within the same kind of division, but moved around. So there's a lot of things you can do within preservation, and I hope y'all will all take advantage of kind of asking us about our experiences as well as the programs that we run. So Jim did a great job of kind of talking about where preservation came from, but a little bit more on the government side of things. So what I wanted to make sure I mentioned is that the preservation movement in our country really started on the private side, and we often credit the start of that with the saving of Mount Vernon. And Ann Pamela Cunningham from South Carolina, I am also from South Carolina, so she's one of my heroes, rallied the ladies of Mount Vernon to save the father of our country's house from developers. So even early, before the 1900s, this is happening, and we're having to kind of rally to save the things that are important to us. From that kind of point, it moves into communities wanting to save themselves. So we look at the earliest local historic district being passed in Charleston, South Carolina in the 1930s. And then later we see that also in places like New Orleans, Savannah, because those communities, even at that early date, are realizing that it is this architecture and this sense of community that makes them special and opens them up to things like tourism, which still holds true today. So I'd like to give you a little bit of a breakdown of who does what in preservation. It's confusing because all our names start with national, but some of you may be working for some of these organizations, but you can see on the private side, this is how it breaks down at the national, state, and the local level. And then as Jim talked to you about in great detail, or really good detail, the Preservation Act is put into place, and really that creates the federal preservation program. And although Jim might think the National Register is the most important part, I think the most important part is that it establishes a system of state historic preservation offices throughout the country. And that really becomes the backbone of the preservation movement, and still is to this day. Without those states running these programs for us, I don't think we would see the impact that we are able to have. As Jim mentioned, the Act is amended several times, and he mentioned the tax incentive program. What I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about is the Certified Local Government Program, and then the tribal preservation offices that are also added. So on the public side of preservation, you can see these are the entities that kind of make up that side, the government side, with the Park Service, the Advisory Council. You're going to hear from Judy about that in a little bit. Federal preservation officers, and then your state historic preservation offices. And then at the local level are those certified local governments. We're going to touch on those briefly, as well as other local preservation commissions. So when I say Federal Preservation Partnership Program, it really is a partnership. And you can see how this lays out with the federal, state, tribal, and local governments all working together in a semblance of a system that functions pretty well, and talking to each other throughout the process of listings, whether it be listing something in a local level, the certified local government's going to be notified, the state will know, the tribe will know, or whether it's going through Section 106 review, ensuring that all these entities know what's going on when the Federal Preservation Program is going to impact them. So my program kind of manages that partnership program, and the main way we do that is through grant funding. So the Historic Preservation Fund was established in '77, follows the Act as a way to fund the items that were in the Act, listed in the Act and created by the Act. It actually comes from offshore oil lease revenue, so it does not come from tax dollars. And you may have heard of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. That's the sister fund to the HPF, as we call it. So it's a similar type of source, but I think that's an important thing to know about the fund. The majority of our funding is done in a series of block grants that go to our 59 state historic preservation offices. So each state, territory, District of Columbia, all have a state office. They get a chunk of funding and are asked to run several programs for us, like the National Register, the Certified Local Government Program, the Tax Incentive Program. You will hear a lot about these things. And that is why the state office is often the front line, or the first place that you will come into contact with what are actually federal programs. But we kind of do a swap, money for assistance to help run those. One of the important things about the money we give to the states is 10% of that money has to be directed to certified local governments. And those are communities that have taken on a commitment to do preservation at the local level. So they've established a preservation commission, they have an ordinance, they may do design review, they do education, they review National Register nominations. So if this money isn't given to those local governments, we actually take it back. That's about $50 million each year right now. Then we have a similar type of program that goes to our tribal historic preservation offices. This is a program that's been growing very quickly. We're over 190 tribal offices right now. They get a total of about 12 to 13 million. So you can see a lot less money divided up over a lot more entities. And so they use their money usually to fund a staff person in the office or part of a staff person to help them work with their tribal responsibilities. Now, a Tribal Historic Preservation Office, or THPO as we call them, is a federally recognized tribe that has taken on some of the responsibilities of the State Historic Preservation Office. So they may be handling that National Register process, the Section 106 review, those types of things. So that's kind of the way those two entities work together. Here's where you can find out a little bit more about the Certified Local Government Program. We have over 2,000 of these communities across the country, and it might be kind of fun to look up and see if your community is one. We're going to just go through a few of the kind of success stories that happen with that program. It's one I'm pretty proud of. This is a new CLG web app that we have available in GIS that you might want to look around and play with. It's under our HPF in Action tab on our website, and it shows the intersection of certified local governments and national parks. So through GIS, we were able to demonstrate that over 85% of our certified local governments are actually gateways to national parks, and that can create pressures on communities and how they deal with preservation. So the intent of this app was to help to provide contact information for the park and those communities so they can get in touch with each other, understand what other kind of federal impacts they might have with federal land, and also be able to search for their National Register sites. So kind of a fun project that we've been doing in our office. We do a lot of partnerships outside of our office as well. We work very closely with the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions. I encourage you to look at their offerings. Their forum that was supposed to be in Tacoma, Washington is now going virtual, and that might be a nice opportunity. And often there are scholarship opportunities maybe offered through the National Alliance or maybe some of your states or local governments. So it's a great place, great energy of local preservation, and you can learn a lot from them. They also do a camp mentoring program, and that is one of the ways that we assist them as we provide funding for that program so that communities can host that all over the country. An example of one of the projects we've done in a local community, working with youth. We've got an art contest and a local community workbook. I'm pretty convinced this guy's going to be an architect if he built that all by himself. But we always are, excited to engage the next generation. This is an example of the fires that hit in Colorado. The 4 Mile Canyon fire burnt a lot of Boulder County. They had not surveyed, and that's one of the main tools in preservation, is to go out and survey and look for what is important and historic. So they didn't know where to send their resources after the fire hit. But they surveyed after the fire and they knew what was important. So when the flooding hit, that was partially caused by the fire, they knew where to direct their resources, and they knew this church was important and they were able to stabilize it. So that's why surveys that are funded by us are so important. Jim mentioned Section 106, the involvement of federal agencies, and that leads to review if it affects historic resources. This affected a historic bridge in Iowa, and this was just a fun partnership program with a helicopter, but it would turn into a training exercise for the National Guard. They were able to move the bridge to a new location, an entry for their state park, and so it's kind of a win-win, but the local community got very involved in this too through that Section 106 process. Kalamazoo used some of our funding to do job training. It's real hard to find people to work on old windows, and so they not only taught people how to do it, but helped set them up in a career to do it with the materials and tools that they needed, and then posted all the videos on YouTube of how to do those windows. This is another location just to find more on what projects we do. We have compiled about 3,000 projects that we have funded in this portal. So if you're curious about what kind of things you might work on as a preservation person in the field, this will be a good place to kind of look around. So we also have these competitive grants, and I will whiz through those pretty quickly because I'm over my time. But to give you a sense of what those are, and then there are other grant programs that I think you're going to hear more about, especially Emily's going to talk about battlefields next. But just quickly to touch on, in addition to that block funding that we get from the Historic Preservation Fund, we also get competitive grant funds, and we have more competitive grant funds than we've ever had before. And that involves 6 different programs that we run directly out of our office. So these are things that states, tribes, local governments, nonprofits apply to us directly for that funding. And one of our largest programs is our Civil Rights Grant Program, which is we've had since 2016. We have $15.5 million available, and this has just been an amazing program. Some of the stories that we're able to save and talk about, the places where the civil rights movement and all the activities involved with it has happened. This is a photo of Leona Tate as she's being escorted to school in New Orleans. That school is one of our grant projects. We're doing a preservation project with it. And I got to meet Leona Tate and walk through the building with her, which is really an amazing experience. The marshal that was escorting her actually felt that this was such an important thing in his life that he chose to have his ashes scattered on the grounds of that school building. So the stories that go with the building are what's so important to keep sharing, and that we're really excited to do that through this program. We also have a program for historic Black colleges and universities. If any of you might be in attendance, this specifically does repair to the buildings that are National Register listed. And there's a lot of wonderful resources on those historic campuses. This is a new program for us. It's a way to kind of distribute money out in a block grant that then is subgranted to rural areas, so does projects across the country in that way. So a little bit like our certified local government program. And then Save America's Treasures is one of our longest running programs. It focuses on nationally significant properties and collections. So Jim talked to you about being listed at different levels in the register. This is for National Historic Landmarks in that national level. Started with the millennium, and actually we lost funding for it for a while, but now have it back. And so it's funded some amazing projects. And we actually do have a story map on our website that tells you more about those projects if you want to learn about them. Our Tribal Heritage Grant Program is our oldest competitive grant program. We do all kinds of different types of preservation projects with the tribes, a lot of cultural preservation of like basket weaving or dancing traditions, oral histories, those types of things. So also very interesting work that we do. And then our Underrepresented Community Program ties directly back to Jim's program in the National Register, in that its intent is to list those communities that are not yet represented in the register. And one of the really successful programs has been the Montana African American Project. They have a wonderful website. They've won some awards and done about 4 phases, but going out and surveying sites that were involved with African Americans throughout the state and getting those listed in the National Register. And then when we do have some disasters, we are given additional funding. So right now we are managing hurricane funding for Sandy, Harvey, Irma, Maria, and Florence, and YouTube, and Michael. So that helps assist the state offices